everybody. We have a huge amount of information to go through today. This is probably the most complex live stream I've ever done. I have loaded up a lot of images and this was a huge info dump on the part of James Gunn and Peter Safran. But before we get started, it is the first live stream of the week, so you know what that means. It means time to gift some memberships. I see Dancing Dog 60 and 80s Model have already been so generous, and I start off every week donating memberships to match the generosity of you. Hey, Ciro. So we're going to go through a tremendous amount of information. You're going to, of course, be able to join alongside. I'll keep an eye on your comments. Hey, MM92, thank you. But for the most part, I'm going to cook. But then we'll have a supersized Ask Me Anything, Q&A about what we're talking about at the end, okay? Because we just have so much to go through. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you so much. We just have a tremendous amount of information. Hey, Michael. And I think that is part of the story in and of itself. Thank you, Michael. That's very generous of you. Thank you, Bubbles. Oh, you guys are so sweet. Bubbles, you changed your photo. Wanda's attorney. Oh, that's so sweet of you. You guys are all really nice. Okay. All right. So, as I reported, I'm so glad my scoop was correct. Hey, Devin. Thank you. There was a private press event on Friday, and there's actually a little bit of information in there. It wasn't, I had been described of it as a total nothing burger event, but I think there's like some interesting things here, and I think some things to be concerned about. Thank you, Yaya. But yes, there was a private, thank you guys for your faith in my scooping. Thank you, Tony. Hey, Sean. All right, so the private press event was on Friday. What was it? It was like an hour. It was really an hour of Ask James Gunn and Peter Safran anything that you want. And I think that the result of that is something that isn't particularly effective in interfacing with the fans. If the point of the event was to make sure the press is friendly towards them, I guess maybe it was somewhat successful. I think, everybody enjoys, access. But at the same time, having them travel and come to an event without giving them like a discernible headline, I feel is, not great either. It's funny you say a Comic-Con level event, Paul, because, I have some bad news for you. So it was, as I said, a chat, and one of the most interesting things about it to me was that you could read the trade's coverage, and it was different. The first article that I saw when the embargo lifted was Deadline. Deadline didn't even mention the new animated shows, which I find very bizarre. Variety discussed them. Everybody had different takeaways from the meeting. And so that, to me, is not very successful as a press event. I think that James Gunn, I'm not sure why James Gunn won't talk directly to fans professionally. He's more than happy to talk to you guys on the Twitters, but I don't understand why he won't interface with you. I mean, he doesn't have to have live comments, the internet can be really brutal, but so what? It doesn't have to be a two-way street. I think when they first announced their slate, he had a little video that he had, and I think that, that was a nice idea. So also there was no clear headline. So as a result, this never trended this morning. I think a couple of things trended top 25, but they had a huge DC announcement this morning at noon. The embargo lifted, and they never were able to break into the top 10. That's because there wasn't any single story to rally behind. Starfire got the closest. But I think that just the amorphousness of the announcement made it very, I wish DC Studios had trended. I wish they had paid for like a special animation if you hashtag, like a special little emoji next to DC Studios hashtag, or if you press the like button, something happens. They're probably saving their money for Superman. But I would not say it was a particularly effective event, but we certainly have a lot to discuss. Okay, so I have 7 slides. This is slide number 1. I've broken down the announcement into 7 slides. I've tried to compartmentalize it the best that I could. Paul, Fandom was a great event the first time. Second Fandom sucked. First Fandom was incredible. And I wish that they had stayed with that, particularly because Fandom wasn't very expensive. It was a purely digital event, and so it was not that expensive to put together. And I wish they had kept Fandom. It was really phenomenal. All right, see, I have nice things to say about DC, and some of these things are okay, but I still think, it's a little bit nerve-wracking. So let me get these guys up here. I've got additional images. There they are. I like this picture because David Zaslav is like, I'm in here too, guys. I mean, clearly, in my opinion, based on this situation, only James Gunn reads comics. I don't think that Peter Safran reads comics. I mean, I think he has experience with the space, obviously, and David Zaslav sure doesn't read comics. And I think they're all just relying on James Gunn's expertise. They're like, he reads comics, he worked at Marvel, he's obviously got to know what he's doing. And you're like, that's a famous last words. So they've announced that this is the slate that they're working towards. And I think it's too much. And especially when as some of you have already pointed out, when you combine this with the fact that Sony and Marvel are going to be releasing all of their own comic book content, it's too much. Hey, Christopher. All right, so 2 live-action movies a year and 1 animated movie a year. Way too much. Way too much. I would do, I got to tell you, the way things are going right now, I'd do one live-action movie a year and 1 animated movie every other year. I mean, it is great that they're bringing animation to the big screen. DC has always excelled in animation on the small screen. It's been actually one of their strengths consistently over the years. And so it's exciting, although, of course, the Miles Morales Sony Spider-Man movies that are animated over at Sony have been fantastic, although it's taken frickin' forever to get to the next one. But it's a lot. And so they want to have 2 live-action movies, 1 animated movie, 2 live-action shows. I think you could do 2 live-action shows a year. But again, I hope they don't run into the same problem that Marvel has run into. In that, do you have to watch, is it all at one experience? And then 2 animated shows, which makes me nervous. Animated shows have proven not to do well. They do very poor in the ratings. I think that I would probably focus on 1 and making sure that it was an X-Men 97 level event, which itself did not do very well in the ratings, but at least it got fans excited. So X-Men 97 was effective in that regard. All right, then I want to talk about one thing that I observed and reading about this event was that, I think James Gunn clearly is trying to learn from Kevin Feige's mistakes, and he's like, now I have my own sandbox. I'll do it better. And he's opting for a writer-director-driven slate of programming rather than something that's driven by the slate itself. Now, obviously, Marvel has run into problems, but I feel that doing a writer-director-driven slate is also problematic because writers and directors take too long. And they don't have the goal, they don't see the big picture. It's not their responsibility to see the big picture. The big picture is James Gunn and Peter Safran's responsibility. And so 2 examples that I want to point out to you on this are Clayface. They said they had no idea they wanted to make a Clayface movie until it was pitched to them by Mike Flanagan. And that to me is a problem because a Clayface movie, as you're going to see as we dive further into, I got to tell you, it's already a mess. We thought starting from scratch we'd have a very clear structure, but it's already all over the place. And I think that's a concern. But I don't think a Clayface movie fits with the game plan. So that makes me I would not have greenlit a Clayface standalone movie. Clayface HBO series like The Penguin, yes, I would have greenlit that. But I don't think it needs to be a movie. Again, I'm a big fan of structure. All the Batman villains, or maybe just DC villains, get a series on HBO Max. Love it. We're good. We have a structure. We have a format. But Clayface, as Obed says, I'd be shocked if Clayface could have his own movie. And then again, why isn't Batman there? It's just like in Penguin. I mean, people made jokes and let it go because the show was so good. But it was a hilarious joke that there were huge explosions and new drugs being introduced into Gotham and Batman couldn't be bothered. And then they said, hey, basically, they had no presentation. They were just like, ask us whatever you want. All right. So someone was like, hey, how's James Gold's Swamp Thing coming along? And they said, we got to tell you, he's really taking a sweet time, but we're just going to have to wait for him. And I'm like, what? I don't think that's appropriate. I think that it's the same way that they're letting Matt Reeves decide if Robert Pattinson is in the DCU or not. Who's in charge here? So I wish, I can understand where James Gunn is coming from, but I think it's a very, he's a creator. He's probably saying, how would I like to be treated? But I think, again, I don't know why fans aren't first. Fans first. It's like, Kevin Feige, to some degree, is putting the studio first these days. James Gunn is putting creatives first. And then it's like, what about just what the audience would want to see? That, to me, I think is concerning. So I'd say, hey, if James Mangold, if Swamp Thing isn't your priority, I'm taking it away from you and giving it to somebody else. But then why do I even need a Swamp Thing movie? I mean, that's a problem. All right, and that leads me to lack of cohesion. I swear, pictures are coming. Don't worry. This is only slide 2. So a real lack of cohesion and direction. What are we doing here? What's going on? What story are we telling? Even in comics, there's structure and an overall story. I mean, I think you're creating a scenario where it's too a la carte of a menu. The beauty, the reason that comic book movies are successful the way they are today is because Kevin Feige created a system where you had to and wanted to see every single installment that came out because it was part of a greater story. Now you're like, hey, do you want to read this Swamp Thing? I mean, comic books are much more inexpensive to produce. If only a couple of people read a Swamp Thing comic, and even then, comics get canceled all the time. Thank you, Dr. Doc. Thanks for joining. It's just a very different space. And I think James Gunn is assuming that regular moviegoers are going to think like comic book readers. And that's simply not the case. Like, will I watch all of this stuff? Of course I will. I'm a DC fan. I'll watch every single thing that they put out. But I don't know if I'm going to cover every single thing that they put out. I just wonder about the interest in a Swamp Thing movie, and especially because James Gunn insisted everyone knows who Swamp Thing is. And I'm like, oh, you clearly have not spoken to my parents, and I have a hard time believing I could even sell my parents on Swamp Thing. I'm just, I think the structure, we just got finished talking about how Marvel lost its structure and that's hurt it. I just feel this is just all over the place. And it's really what interests us. And it's what interests them. It's not what interests the fandom. It's like, hey, what do they think would be cool? And you're like, but I don't think it would be cool. And that's where you run into a lot of problems. Now, James Gunn did say that while he won't confirm it, that was interesting. That was another part. He would say, well, things are out there, but we haven't confirmed it. And I'm like, what? Who the fuck cares? What's the difference? Excuse me. All right, so it's like, dude, it's not like, he acts like he's signing contracts with fans, and like, unless he signed on the dotted line, it's not happening. And you're like, well, everybody feels differently, But he did say that he is working towards some kind of Avengers-style movie. So let's talk about that. All right, finally we get to another picture. All right, so I think all of us, so I have Clayface. Oh, I missed my pictures. Clayface, James Mangold. But then look, okay? I think when he says he's going to do a Justice League movie, we all think it's going to be like that. We're like, oh, cool, like this? Is this what it's going to be? But based on the way he's building the DC universe out of the gate, I think it's going to look more like this. And that's a mess. You're like, oh my God, I spot the 3 in the front there. I spot Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman in there. But that's what it's going to be. Because he's not building, you really would think he would be building, that's the way it works. Let me build these characters. We're going to introduce them. And then they're all going to come into the Justice League movie, just like they did with the MCU and Avengers. But now they're like, no, this is going to be it. And you're going to be like, what the heck is this? I just think it's very, very confusing. Unless the goal is just for them all to punch each other in the face, then you might be able to interest me. It's just, as some of you said, it just even looks like a mess. It just looks like a mess. Very neat and structured. Oh my God, I don't even know where to look. Now, though, if I had my guess, if I was going to bet on it, I would say that he would do World's Finest as the movie that he's building to. That's what I would guess. Something like this. He doesn't have a Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's nowhere near coming around. Maybe she would be introduced in said Justice League movie. But I feel he's proving to be quite the purist. I think, to me, it seems like World's Finest would maybe be first. If you're going to do a team-up movie, that's the team-up movie to do. Now, we all want to see Robert Pattinson and David Cornsweet, but, as was clarified during this meeting, I wouldn't count on it. But they still wouldn't say definitively no, which is why it's very, very frustrating. That's funny, Chad, CJ, it is very male-driven, and that's been often, I think James Gunn does put female characters into his work, but, he's that kind of a comic book fan, and I think that that's very reflected in his work, and I think that he's missing out a big part of the fandom, because he's just, although there's one show that I think might move in that direction. All right, now let's move to the next thing. This is Superman. Okay, so the next slide, some clarification on Superman. All right, so Superman, of course, is the first big movie that's launching this world. You can see, even I'm I feel like my presentation can be more streamlined, but I'm trying to catch like fireflies that are blinking on and off. Okay, so Superman is definitely coming out. Superman's coming out July 11th, 2025, this year. And they insist that they're going to be able to do a Barbie-style campaign. Even though they fired the guy who ran the Barbie-style campaign. Josh Goldstein was fired and let go right after he did a wonderful job launching the Superman trailer. Now, and by the way, although James Gunn said this new guy, John Stanford, cut the trailer. So, now, so let's go back to Barbie-style campaign. This is an okay idea. I understand the vision. I think Superman is a very different type of product. I don't see Superman having the same level of, it's funny, Jose, you say, how can they afford that? Well, the way this was pitched was that they were going to do this style campaign by crossing over with things that Warner Brothers already owns, which is interesting. Which is going to mean it's going to be a cheaper, smaller version of the Barbie campaign. Everybody wants Barbie on, look at that. You can see makeup, fashion, the roller skates were available. I'm not quite sure what they would sell for Superman. They could put Superman, I'm sure Superman maybe will be at Subway Sandwich Shop and stuff like that. But I think, it's a little, that's right, Mika, kind of like how Wicked, NBC Comcast Universal pushed Wicked in a similar manner. However, one other thing I wanted to point out, one of the reasons that the Barbie campaign worked out so well was Margot Robbie. Look at that, I got a GIF. She's so amazing. And she introduced new Barbie outfits that were a perfect recreation of the doll on each stop. Now, they just don't, what are they going to have, one of the different Superman suits for every stop? Barbie's just a very different, Barbie's just a different product. And I'm just not quite sure if you can do the same event. This was incredible. This is a very famous Barbie outfit, and this is the exact recreation of it, down to what the accessories were. That's one of the reasons it was just so exciting. However, let's move on to, some of you have already said, they already started to do this with the Puppy Bowl, which was a massive disappointment. If they had pulled off Puppy Bowl better, I would feel better about their ability to pull off a Barbie-style campaign. When they first introduced Puppy Bowl to us, they told us the Puppy Bowl was going to be this big event where they would showcase crypto and they would give us a sneak peek of the movie. None of those things materialized. James Gunn promoted himself yet again. He did a very nice thing about adopting dogs from shelters, which was very sweet. And then we got this ridiculous thing about Guy Gardner doing a pun on bowl cut and the Super Bowl. So I think that this was really a big swing and a miss. Stitch made a bigger impression during the Super Bowl than Crypto did. And that should not have happened. Crypto and Stitch should have been on par with each other. So if this is the way they're going to implement their Barbie-style campaign, that makes me very nervous because this is not correct. Now, I'm not quite sure what's going on here with avoiding fans. Again, not speaking directly to fans. I'm just very nervous about that. And then that was another announcement that was made, okay? James Gunn said that they will not have a significant presence at Comic-Con this year. And they've skipped it last year. And his argument, this to me is like the worst thing to come out of this presentation. By the way, I don't care if James Gunn wants to make it the James Gunn show. Go ahead. I'd rather he be the James Gunn show than not show up at all. So his argument is that Superman will already have come out. Superman comes out right before Comic-Con on July 11th. But to that I would say, don't you have an entire other slate of things to promote? Like, you're not just in the Superman business. I mean, is he worried Superman could be a failure and he doesn't want to get up on that stage? Just keep going. Kevin Feige doesn't have that luxury. I just feel like they should have a Hall H presentation and they should be talking about all the other things that they're doing. They do have movies. Supergirl is in production. As he announced, Supergirl is halfway done through filming, coming out in 2026. Clayface should be cast by then. So I don't understand why those things wouldn't be highlighted there. And that's right, Yaya Yonsei. What about Lanterns? And Peacemaker Season 2. He has lots to promote at Comic-Con. They might have smaller panels maybe they'll have a Lanterns panel, I would hope. But to not have a significant presence at Comic-Con is very odd. And it hurts. It really hurts. Jose, casted is not a word. I hope you're not trying to correct me on that. It's cast. Someone has been cast. And that's actually, I've seen people talk about that on social media. For some reason, people think casted is a word. It is not a word. It is the poor grammar of the internet. Oh, you were teasing me? Okay, good, Jose. All right. Hey, Angelina. All right. So, Supergirl, halfway done through filming. That's interesting. I told you I fully expect her to show up in the Superman movie in some regard, either during the movie or in a post-credit scene. I think that's probably where you'll get your first look at Supergirl. But I think it's a huge mistake not to be at Comic-Con. I could not underscore how much of a mistake I think this is. It was bad enough that they skipped it last year. I think to do it 2 years in a row is becoming odd. All right, let's talk about Batman. All right, next slide. Batman! Woohoo! James... you think he's scared of Fantastic Four, Yaya? That's interesting. You can't be. It doesn't matter. I wouldn't be scared of Fantastic Four, and you just can't be. I mean, this business ain't for the faint of heart. All right, so yes, Batman. All right, so the first DC Studios Batman project will be the Clayface movie, which has had to take, remember, it comes out September 11th, 2026. Worst release date ever. We were just talking about this. For the love of God, move it to Wednesday, the Wednesday before, September 9th, because that is just an awful date. So this is coming out September 11th, 2026, and it will be produced by Matt Reeves. They have not clarified which universe it exists in. I think it exists in the Robert Pattinson universe. James Gunn says they're working on a logo that's for Elseworlds that will play in front of Elseworlds projects. So when the show or movie starts, you'll have to look at the logo that plays in front of it to know whether or not it's Elseworlds or in the main universe. What? I just want to watch a show or a movie. I think that's just way too complex, especially for general audiences. But Clayface, the thing that concerns me the most about Clayface is I have serious concerns as to whether or not By the way, I want to say the story sounds good to me, but as his own HBO Max miniseries or within a Batman movie. I do not think Clayface can support his own film. And also, I'm a little nervous that they said that it's supposed to be something like The Conjuring or The Nun, that they're going to try and make a DC-style Warner Brothers horror film. That's right, Adam DeSabato. This is ridiculously complicated. The next Batman movie has X, Y, and Z villains, and we're excited about it. Moving on. It's just weird. And I'm not quite sure. I mean, I'm sure that I will probably enjoy the heck out of it. I think there's a very strong chance that I feel like I'm going to have the conversation we always have, where I'm like, I liked it, and everybody else doesn't go and see it, or it doesn't work out. I mean, let's see who they cast as Clayface. But I'm just nervous about it. All right, then he gave an update on the Batman Part 2. Well, let's not do Folie à Deux. After Folie à Deux, let's leave the French out of it, I guess. So what's going on with the Batman Part 2? Well, they can't do tax write-offs anymore, Gunner. That's only something you could do right after a merger or acquisition. That window has closed. So they just got to release it. All right, so they still have Matt Reeves, although to be fair to Matt Reeves, he's been dealing with a lot of personal, very serious issues. So I think, obviously we want to be sympathetic to that. But although, as I said, look, it's going to start filming at the end of the year. They said they've read some stuff. They said it sounds very good, but they haven't gotten a full script. So Matt Reeves hasn't officially turned in a script yet. But they are still planning to film at the end of the year in 2025. I really hope this is a Mr. Freeze movie. I mean, at the end of the Penguin miniseries, Gotham had snow. I think all signs point to a Mr. Freeze movie, but this is 2027. It's taking an extremely long time. I think it'll all be worth it if it is actually incredible, but this is just taking an extremely long time. I can't share Matt Reeves' personal problems with the world. That's up to Matt Reeves to do. But it's not just him getting a divorce. It's more serious than that. It's the kind of thing where you'll be like, oh, I should not have said anything mean about him. All right, so Batman 2 is coming. It's coming, but Matt Reeves has taken a very long time. I hope, due to personal issues and also hopefully to get it right. Then they talked about the Penguin season 2. People again, people were just fishing for stories. They're like, are you going to do more Penguin? And they said, well, that really depends on if Colin Farrell wants to do it. Again, what? I mean, there's a lot of feelings going on over at DC. They're like, well, how do you feel about it, Colin? And it's too bad they asked him because he gave an answer last night at the SAG Awards, and he said he didn't want to do it. They were like, I mean, he said he didn't want, in all fairness, he said he didn't not want to do it, but he didn't want to do it either. Colin Farrell said, he could go either way on another series. He feels really good about what they did, and he would hate for it not to be good going forward. He fully expects to appear in the Batman Part 2 in a smaller role, but he said he's not really pushing to do more Penguin. And yeah, that's right. You're right, Ross. That's right. CM and Ross. Fine. Let's go move to Catwoman. We get to keep Kristen Milioti as Sophia Falcone, because she, of course, is the half-sister of, she could be the tying thread. Catwoman wrote her a letter. Let's have Selena come back to town. There's your next miniseries. That's great. Let's do it. I wish they would announce that. That would make me very happy. So, again, the fact that we have to wait to see how Colin Farrell feels, can we talk Colin Farrell out of it? Who cares? This train's moving. Get on or off, man. That's what they should be doing. They could go to Bloodhaven, Dre Robinson. I don't care. Have Kristen Milioti go over and do that. I don't care. But just something like that where we jump with a connected thread to all the Batman villains on HBO Max. That would be great. So yeah, so the fact that James Gunn hasn't thought of that and isn't quickly moving in that direction. Thanks, Prabangad. That's very sweet of you to say. Is just tough. That's right, Tribble Driscoll. Get on or off, man. This train's a moving. I think that's how a studio head, particularly someone who's running a franchise, needs to be. I have fans that I have to take care of. They have things they need to see. I need to do this. And you're either with me or you're in my way. Okay. Then they talked about, well, what's going on with Batman? What's going on with Batman? Is Robert Pattinson your Batman? And I heard conflicting stories about what was said at the press event. All right, so the trades reported that Gunn said, maybe? He said it's very unlikely that Robert Pattinson will be our Batman, but he just said very unlikely. And you're like, dude, how is this still not decided? I told you before that I think it'll be decided by the success of the Superman movie and whether or not Matt Reeves wants either to go join the party or get away from that stink. But I wish he would just say we're waiting to see how Superman does. Just be honest. Be like, we're waiting to see how Superman does, and then we'll decide. So or he should just say, no, they're going to be separate. Because I'd heard that he emphatically said, don't get confused. Okay? He said, they're separate. It's very important that you make that clear. And you're like, it's not clear, and it never will be clear. It'll never be clear. In fact, he even said at this press event that he didn't like the fact that they used to, as I've said, that DC in the past has had a fractured audience. There's one Superman on the big screen, a different Superman on the small screen. So you're like, but you're doing that exact same thing with Batman. And it's all because of Matt Reeves. Because Matt Reeves is insisting no. And I agree with Marty. Who is in charge here? Also, by the time they get to Batman Brave and the Bold, Robert Pattinson will be old enough to technically probably be the father of Damian. And so they could do it. All right, but they said unlikely. James Gunn said unlikely. He didn't say no. He didn't say yes. He just said unlikely. And you're like, dude. Okay, so who will be Batman? This is a famous comic book cover. You know, Damian, not always, I'm not sure if that's Batman or if that's Dick Grayson as Batman. Grant Morrison, you want complicated. You know, that's the way it is. Hold on one second. So anyway, that's a great image of Damian Wayne. I love Damian, and I have to say, I love that James Gunn loves Damian Wayne. He is my favorite Robin, and James Gunn says he's his favorite Robin. So we have that in common. It is a powerful image. I love this image. They said they have not yet cast their Batman. They're probably waiting to see if that's just, again, it's all dependent on how Superman does, in my opinion. And I think, if that movie only does okay, they'll keep them separate. And then he'll cast a Batman. And the question is he going to be the same age as Robert Pattinson? And then you're like, well, that's even dumber. That would have to be someone older. But then how do you pair him up with David Cornsweet? The whole thing's very stupid. But James Gunn did say our Batman might show up before Brave and the Bold gets made. I can't believe Andy Muschietti's still attached to this thing, by the way. Andy Muschietti is still attached to the Batman Brave and the Bold movie, even after The Flash. That, to me, is really shocking. I liked The Flash, but people hated The Flash so much that it makes me feel like I wouldn't know if I trusted Andy Muschietti going forward. So that's what's going on. You might see it's very confusing, Yusef. There's only one Batman right now, played by Robert Pattinson, who is maybe coming back in 2027. There's a Clayface movie, which probably won't feature Batman. In fact, Batman didn't show up during The Penguin, and he's probably not going to show up during Clayface. Now, is he David Cornsweet's Batman? Well, we don't know. It's unlikely, but we won't say no. However, at some point in the future, we will probably cast our own Batman, and then he might show up before his introductory movie. And you're like, what? Okay. Batman movie, Superman movie, Wonder Woman movie, Justice League movie. It's very easy. It's very simple. What are we doing? John Hamm would be great, Paul. John Hamm would be phenomenal. But then that should be the Elseworlds story. Okay. And then if you're going to start off with a Robin, it's got to be Dick Grayson. Because Damian Wayne only makes sense if you've gone through at least Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, and Tim Drake. You can't have Damian before you have those three Robins. It just doesn't make sense. There's no context. Okay. I feel very strongly about this. All right, next slide. All right, let's talk about animation, because this is nuts. It gets even more ridiculous. I think this animation slate is truly awful. Okay. We can't skip Tim Drake Mystic, because that's who Damian has to challenge. That's a very important part of Damian's coming in. He tried to kill Tim Drake. It was great. Okay. I like Starfire. I just don't like the way she's being utilized here. All right, so of course this dynamic duo movie is coming up. This will be a movie. The dynamic duo movie is coming out, I think, in 2028 or 2027. It's very far away. It's further away than the Batman movie. It's going to have two Robins in it. I believe it was Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. They will coexist. And they are going to have totally changed origin stories. So I'm already like, I don't want it. It clearly seems to me to be something of a ripoff of the Spider-Verse movies, and I'm just nervous about it. But yeah, and this is going to be produced by Matt Reeves. That's right, it's part puppets, it's part animation, it's all over the place. So that's definitely coming in the very far future. Then they're doing some series. They're going to do a Blue Beetle animated series. They said this is going to be very child-oriented. It's going to skew very young, this Blue Beetle animated series. I don't know if anybody would like this. I mean, let's see. This screams to me a corporate idea. They're like, oh, look how many the Latino audience has become very influential in the entertainment space. Let's make them an animated series for kids. And you're like, but who would watch this? I got to tell you, I think James Gunn doesn't seem to realize that a lot of the stuff that he's making, the audience is adults. So I'm not quite sure why he's making so much stuff for kids. I mean, I can understand they want to get new audience members to get excited about this stuff and then become the adult, it's generational. But I don't think this is the way to do it. I have mixed feelings about it. Okay. Then they have 3 new animated shows that were announced. The first is My Adventures with Green Lantern. Clearly this is a take on My Adventures with Superman, which is actually somewhat popular. So there's an animated Superman series that I think some of you watch. Jack Quaid voices Superman. Now they're going to do a take on Green Lantern, but it's going to be Jessica Cruz. Are there any Jessica Cruz fans here? I don't really know how well she's worked out. I think there are a lot of other Lanterns. I think Kyle maybe would have been a better choice. So it's funny, some of you like the show, some of you don't. I know a certain group is going to come after this show like you wouldn't believe. But yeah, so it's going to be Jessica Cruz in high school. She gets a Green Lantern ring, and shenanigans ensue. All right, so there's that show. Then there is this show, which, oh my God, I mean, I can't believe this show exists. Superpowers. It's a high school superhero show. So Martian Manhunter, what's he doing these days? He's a high school principal training the next generation of superheroes. Oh my God. The people on this team will be Lightning, Flash, Plastic Man, Aquagirl, Green Lantern. They don't say which Green Lantern it is. Maybe it's Jessica Cruz. And Terra. How the hell did Terra get in here? This group doesn't even go together. I don't understand how they put this group together. Plastic Man and Flash and Lightning are a different generation from the other characters. I don't know who's been upgraded or if someone's been downgraded. I think it's just really bad. So this is what this is. They're in high school. They want to be superheroes. They want to graduate to the big leagues. And the question is, can Martian Manhunter help them do it? Oh my God. Okay, I would have laughed and said, that was a funny joke if this was pitched to me, and then been very sad when they said they were genuine. Then here's a show that got the most attention, Starfire, although you can see the direction that it's going to go in based on this title treatment. All right, so it's funny you say Gen V for this other show, Dre Robinson. But Gen V already exists, and Gen V doesn't, I mean, DC already has a lot of stuff. You don't need to come up with new DC teams. There's already the Titans. You don't need superpower stuff, All right, so then Starfire. So she's getting an animated series where she is escaping Tamaran, so her home planet where she was a prisoner. And I guess that this is before she ever gets to Earth. So she escapes Tamaran, and she travels into space, and she meets some other women, Crush, who's actually Lobo's daughter. And you're like, we're introducing Lobo and Supergirl, and he already has a daughter? What are we doing here? This is just moving so quickly. Fern, I forgot who Fern was. And then Princess Amethyst, who I think is a cool character, but I don't know why she's in space. Princess Amethyst of Gemworld. And they're going to go through space and run across stuff like space dolphins. So I was like, oh, I see what you're doing. You're doing the Netflix She-Ra treatment. And someone said Bee and Puppy Cat, which is a similar line. That's what this does to me. So this is clearly going to be made for a very different audience. I would expect it to probably skew LGBTQ in some regard. Maybe not with Starfire herself, but perhaps the other characters. It's a little Marvels-like. That's right, it's very the Marvels-like. And we'll see if this works. I'm not sure how it'll do, to be honest with you. I feel like the people who would be interested in a Starfire show wouldn't be interested in this. So let's see what the treatment is. But, when you look at that title treatment, it does make me feel like it's headed in that direction. All right, so that's the animation. I'm telling you, this is craziness. All right, then next, let's talk about other movies. Okay. All right, so see total lack of structure. Other movies. So yes, they're still making Sergeant Rock. I can't believe they're making a Sergeant Rock movie. I think it just seems so crazy to me that they're making a Sergeant Rock film. I don't understand who this could possibly be for. But now what I find fascinating is that this movie is going to be directed by this man, Luca Guadagnino. And I love that he's wearing the sweatshirt. That makes me very happy. It's so funny to see it on him. It's like if Scorsese put it on. And Luca Guadagnino is directing, and Justin Kuritsky's, who's the screenwriter for Challengers and Queer, is going to write Sergeant Rock. Now, I do wonder if there'll be an LGBT element in Sergeant Rock, because Luca Guadagnino has never made a movie in his entire life that did not have an LGBTQ element to it. He would be very good at Teen Titans. He would be a great, Ben 10, that's a better use for him, actually, because I think he's very of the moment. But yeah, I would be shocked if there wasn't an LGBTQ component in this movie. And there isn't one, there isn't one in the comics, but that's what interests Luca Guadagnino. I mean, maybe he'll change it. He would do a good Nightwing, Nacho Flores. He could be a fantastic director for Nightwing. Oh, that's such a shame. I like Luca Guadagnino in the DC space. I think he's not a good fit with Sergeant Rock. Maybe it won't. But then I feel, why are you using Luca Guadagnino? I mean, Luca Guadagnino has every right to expand his repertoire and maybe make a film that features only straight characters. But then I'll be even more interested to know what interests him about the property. Then though, Daniel Craig. So somebody said, is it true that Daniel Craig dropped out? And James Gunn said Daniel Craig was never signed. He said, we talked about Daniel Craig because he's worked with Luca Guadagnino in the past, but he never officially signed on, and he's not going to do it. Okay, let's just see how the movie turns out. I'm interested in it, but I do think that I'm happy to have my mind changed, but I think Luca Guadagnino, while I'm so happy that James Gunn got him, I don't understand why he's been paired with this subject matter. I do not think it's a fit. Although they say they love the script that Justin Kuritsky's turned in. Oh, Steven says that Luca Guadagnino says that he wants to branch out and stop doing LGBTQ stories and be a commercially successful director. Is that what that photo says? Why doesn't he put on some bling and hold up cash? And I'd be like, dude, you joined the Cursed franchise. I don't know why nobody talked to you about that. I don't know. That'd be interesting. I mean, I'm certainly open to it. I think people who like Luca Guadagnino's style aren't interested in a superhero World War II story, but let's see. All right, then they talked about the Teen Titans movie. They said, yeah, we're still making a Teen Titans movie with Starfire in it. And you're like, what? Why don't you just focus on this? And I do agree that Luca Guadagnino would be much better used here. So they're doing a Titans movie. It's going to feature characters like Nightwing, Cyborg, and Starfire. Let's see if they can afford Beast Boy. And then Anna Nogueira, who wrote the Supergirl script, is apparently also a massive Teen Titans fan, and she has been the one pushing for this movie. So we'll see. I mean, I think Titans are overexposed. I know there are people who are massive Teen Titans fans. I'm kind of sick of them. And I think we should be focusing on the Justice League, to be honest with you. But, and also I would prefer to see Nightwing in a Batman movie first. I would not want him introduced in the Titans beforehand. Okay. Then, next up, they are working on a Deathstroke Bane movie. There are rumors that it could even film as early as this year. I don't understand why they're making this movie. Again, maybe this could be a series. I have a hard time understanding why anybody would pay to see this in theaters. It just seems odd to me. But they're doing it. All right. And by the way, Dave Bautista is really campaigning for a role in DC, and I do think he'd make an excellent Bane. I mean, he is Bane in real life in many ways, even with him trying to be sound very intellectual all the time, erudite. I'm like, wow, dude, you are Bane. Okay. Like when they were, I'm telling you, I read a script where they teased Bane at the end of Peacemaker, and it was a good scene too. It was low key, but it was very good. And I thought that that should have been Dave Bautista. Then they swear they're still making an Authority movie, The Authority, with the two very famous, for what Wiccan is for Marvel, Apollo and Midnighter are for DC in terms of LGBTQ superheroes. But anyway, he insists that they're still making an Authority movie. But he said that it's taking a very, very long time because it's proving very difficult to do. And you're like, then why'd you announce it? And even more so, why'd you put one of the characters in your Superman movie? This is the engineer, played by Maria Gabriella. And, this was supposed to lead into an Authority movie. She's basically like a living Iron Man, the way they've redesigned her. You can see that in the comics, she's made of she has a metal suit all over her. But now instead they said she's like a superhero who has nanites injected into her. So she's just like a living Iron Man, basically, I guess is the idea. So we'll see how it works, but it's a little bit of a bummer that this character is going to be introduced in the Superman movie this summer, and they don't even have a completed script for the movie that she's supposed to lead to. All right, so that's the movies that they're working on. Then next, okay, last slide. Okay, shows. They're working on some shows. All right, so Peacemaker. Peacemaker is the only show coming out this year, Peacemaker Season 2. It comes out in August 2025 after Superman, and there are rumors that Lex Luthor will make an appearance. I feel that appearing on Peacemaker is beneath the Lex Luthor character. I think it cheapens the Lex Luthor character, and I think it cheapens the movie. I would seriously advise against it, but here we go. All right, so Peacemaker for 2025. We'll see how it does, by the way. We'll see how it does in the ratings. I'm very curious to see if it can break into the top 10. Then Lanterns, which I'm extremely excited about. I'm so excited for Lanterns. Lanterns is about to start filming, or maybe even has started filming. Lanterns, they said, is going to come out in early 2026, which means it might get the Last of Us spot. The Last of Us Season 1 debuted at the beginning of the year in 2023. It was an incredible time. It was really amazing. That's a great time. Nothing's happening that time of year. It's super quiet. I think Lanterns could be really big. I did see the headline that it was going to be a very adult show. I hope that just means they swear a lot, I have a tremendous faith in the writing team that they hired for Lanterns. It's Damon Lindelof from Watchmen, and also Chris Mundy, I think, from Ozark. I have a very hard time feeling this show isn't going to be good. I think the casting, hopefully, is pretty good. I mean, I am a Jon Stewart fan, so I don't feel bad what they're doing to Hal Jordan. If you're a Hal Jordan fan, then I'm sorry, I feel bad for you. But oh well. That's okay. Yeah, the Penguin was adult, Adam Sphere. That's a good point. I hope it's adult in that manner. I mean, I just think that the creative team in front of and behind the camera is so strong for Lanterns. I think this is going to be amazing. I think it might be, in my opinion, after Batman from Matt Reeves, the strongest thing that they are putting out. All right, then there are some shows that are still in development, they said. So the Amanda Waller show is just taking forever. They really wanted to spin out of Peacemaker Season 2, but it's just taking an extremely long time. It was a little slowed down because of the strikes, for the writing strikes, but it's going to take a really long time. Again, it's taking so long that I don't know what the point of it is by the time it gets here. All right, then they said they're also working still on Paradise Lost. A lot of people are like, where's Wonder Woman? My guess is that James Gunn is avoiding Wonder Woman because Gal Gadot is so perfect in the role. I think he just wants distance. I mean, she didn't do a great job in Wonder Woman 1984, to be fair. But I think she still very much seems like the character. For some reason, he doesn't want to get anywhere near Wonder Woman. I'm not quite sure why. It's weird not to have the Trinity. He's moving ahead with Superman. He's moving forward with Batman. Where's Wonder Woman? Instead, he wants to do a show about the Amazon's island on Themyscira. So we'll see. I think that's funny. I mean, I think that Gal Gadot is at a point where people would be okay. I think fans would be okay moving ahead. I think that there's just too much drama around Gal Gadot these days for numerous reasons. And I think, I think people fell out of love with her as the character after Wonder Woman 1984. It was just, it just wasn't good enough. All right, then, that's right, Harley Quinn Dove. I guess Supergirl, you can't have, if they do a trinity with Supergirl, Superman, and Batman, I can't think of a more offensive thing to do to fans. I would be very offended if that's what they did. It would be really bad. It's very weird that James Gunn is supposed to be coming from a place of being a big comic book fan, but yet he makes changes that are just totally, just so, like, I can't believe that a comic book fan would approve redoing the origin stories for Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. It's just very odd to me. I don't understand why somebody would approve that. I would just be like, no, that you can't. And then for some reason, he still wants to make this Booster Gold show. Kumail Nanjiani, I have to say, I feel bad that Kumail Nanjiani would have to deal with a lot of toxicity, but we've often said that the most successful race bending of roles is when you find an actor who perfectly personifies the character. For instance, Jeffrey Wright is Jim Gordon. Zoe Kravitz, I feel, is Selena Kyle. But I have to say, Kumail Nanjiani is Booster Gold. He's very well, he just very much fits the character. But I'm sorry to say, I don't think it would be successful. Booster Gold is a very difficult character to do. He's from the future. He has his own little AI, computer intelligence thing that helps him out. He wants to, he's kind of like, he wants to be famous. He wants to be a famous superhero, and he goes back in time and tries to cheat the system. That's basically what it is. I do agree that Glenn Powell and Chris Pratt also seem kind of perfect for the role, but I don't understand the point of Booster Gold at all. I agree with Ben 10. It is such a deep cut. This would be something that, Kevin Feige would be doing now, and people would be saying, don't do it. Deep cuts are very hard sells. They make comic book movies seem more like comic books, and then you remember that most people don't read comic books. Michael Smizer says, most of this feels like phase 2 or 3 of the new DCU. I understand they want to hit the ground running, but it seems disjointed and lacking foundation. I would agree. It seems there was no clear stop to the old DC universe and no new start to what we're going to do under James Gunn. And I feel that's going to be extremely confusing to the general public. All right, so let me go back. Let me go back to the main. Let me just put them in here. I guess I'll do the main slide. This one. Yeah. All right, so it's Q&A time. All right, it took me an hour to explain that. Whew. Whew, baby, woo. All right. Q&A. All right, we'll do a 15-minute Q&A. Okay. Dancing Dog 60 says, 2 universes is confusing. Didn't DC get rid of the Berlantiverse due to confusion? They need to roll the Reeves stuff into the main. 100%. I couldn't agree more. And that's right, Denzel. Still no Zatanna. I would prefer Zatanna over some of these choices. Batman points out that James Gunn's success with Guardians was based on reinventing deep-cut characters. That is a fair rebuttal. However, that was a fringe project done on the side of the Marvel, and it turned out very successfully, and then it became a major building block. But I don't think that same approach can work if you're doing the main characters. David Kyle says they better not cancel the Harley Quinn animated series. Oh, I think it was very weak this season, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. Oh, thanks, Tribble Disco. I'm glad you enjoyed my breakdown. Rodolfo says, if Zazie sells Warner Brothers, would that affect Gunn's universe? It's looking less and less like he's going to sell because he just doesn't seem to be able to find a buyer. I think obviously it would. Obviously Superman is going to be. This is maybe that's one of the reasons this seems so amorphous. Although they have already started rolling on Supergirl, but I think we have to see how Superman does. Right now, all signs point to that it will be a hit. But you never know until you know, because we've been surprised before. Donner, I don't know how this is Gods and Monsters. I don't think he should have named it. Like, why box your... I think James Gunn creates hurdles for himself. There was no reason to call it Gods and Monsters, and it's not Gods and Monsters. Oh, Jesus, how did I get into Batman? My father got me into comic books. He took me to a comic book store, and he said, oh, this is Batman and Superman, and had me start to look into them. And then after I was finished with Archie one day, I said, Archie's never going to choose between Betty and Veronica. Let's go see what's going on in the rest of the comic book store. And that's how, I think, comic book stores are vital to kids getting into comics. And they don't exist anymore, which is too bad, really, for the most part. There used to be a wonderful comic book store in New Jersey. I remember two that I used to go to. I used to go to a comic book store in New Jersey that had a comic book store. It was a mall. And the mall had on one end a comic book store, and on the other end, a miniatures store. Such a girl. But I would buy miniatures for my Barbie dolls. Like, you could buy little miniature food for, it was like supposed to be for models and stuff like that, but I did it for my Barbie dolls. And so I would pick up miniatures, and I would pick up comic books. And I had a great time. That's how I became multifaceted. Tony says, Grace, you cook faster. Thanks. That's very sweet. I've never watched anything DC, but interested in LGBT characters. I don't know who they are. Well, it would be Apollo and Midnighter if they did The Authority. And let's see, that's the only ones really that I can think of that are famous in DC. Adamsphere, you think he's copying Sony? Oh, that's fighting words. I don't know if it's that bad. Hey, Dwight. That's right, Vitor. If it's Gods and Monsters, where the heck is Wonder Woman? I guess Clayface is technically a monster, and, I guess Swamp Thing is a monster, but you're like, eh. Harris says, Grace, do you think he's choosing more obscure characters because less people will care if it's 100% comics accurate? Also, wasn't Iron Man pretty unknown before Robert Downey Jr.? Well, he was still a member of the Avengers. These are characters that are obscure even in the comics. I think that's part of the problem. Maybe that's why he's doing it, but there's always a comic book fan who's going to be like, what the hell are you doing? So I think you got to be careful. CM says, Jonathan Bailey and Sam Reed for Midnighter and Apollo. Sam Reed for Apollo is fantastic casting. I don't know about Jonathan Bailey for Midnighter, though. Jonathan Bailey's so upbeat, and Midnighter is pretty miserable. It's a Batman-Superman pairing, basically. What if Batman and Superman hooked up? That's what Apollo and Midnighter are. Brown Eye Black Sheep, I do agree that it does read like what interests James Gunn, personally. And I don't think that's any way to run a business. Dylan says, I don't know if you saw the SAG official tweets, but I thought most tweets were just congrats for winners. But for Zoe, they had... I don't know. I didn't see that. Dylan, we're talking about DC. I appreciate your question. I don't think they were just talking. I didn't see anything, any favoritism like that. Oh, let's see here. Dwight says, what happened to the Warner Comcast deal? It doesn't seem like they're interested. Universal, I think they spent all their money on Epic Universe, which I think cost a couple $1 billion to make. I'm excited. I can't wait. Bernie Rule says, if Gunn can wait until Eggers is free, then get him to do a hard Greek mythology Wonder Woman film. I don't know if people would be interested in that, to be honest with you. I think some people would, but not a lot. And also, Robert Eggers is booked. Robert Eggers, Universal. Speaking of Universal, he is Team Universal now, and they're going to keep him in the studio. Joey P says, what happened to the Constantine sequel with Keanu? It's still percolating, but I don't think James Gunn's obviously very interested in it. Emma92 says, thanks, Grace, for the great breakdown. If Superman for some reason doesn't do well, will Gunn be held responsible? Of course! It's all him. He's made it all him. I've told you before the dangers of making it all about you, because if it fails, it's your fault. Patty Jenkins learned that the hard way. She said, I had no help on Wonder Woman 1984. And everybody was like, I think you needed some help, Patty. But I mean, Superman, I don't think Superman will flop. That would be horrible. I don't think it's going to flop. But it could come in I don't know how comic book movies are going to do this year. It could come in, I don't think Superman's going to flop, but I don't see $1 billion picture just yet either. Oh, that's right, Phil Layfield. Tim Drake has become an LGBT character. That's true, Tim Drake. And of course, oh, I'm sorry, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. Oh, they're the best. I love them. Although I felt Poison Ivy's lost a lot of her identity. So I think both, it's hard. It's hard to be in a celebrity relationship because sometimes you just become the combo. That was one of my biggest problems with the latest season of Harley and Ivy. I miss Harley and Ivy also on their own. Oh, Ross, you can't do the Amazons without the LGBTQ aspect. It would be ridiculous. That's right, David Kyle. Hall H is supposed to have Marvel and DC. It's respect the balance. They both present on different days. That's the way that it's done. Let's see here. It's only Tuesday. Oh, that's only It's only Monday. So I always say the handover of Cap's shield to mean passing the mantle. Do you think people were upset that the show nullifies this by taking the shield from a bad Cap instead of... Well, what are you talking about? They had a good Cap. Well, it was good Cap who gave the shield. And that's a Marvel question. I appreciate it. That's very generous of you, but that's a Marvel question. And there was no bad Cap. CJ, the people in the room were largely, I think, trade press, and also I think press that James Gunn has a personal relationship with. Stina says, have you ever considered making your own movie? Back in film school, I wrote scripts and stuff. I think obviously I'm very happy. I have to say, it's important in life, I guess building on Timothée Chalamet's speech at the SAG Awards yesterday, and I do think ambition is important, but I think so is humility and understanding that no one is an island. But I think an important thing is that I think a more honorable goal is to want to just work in the business that you love and to realize what a privilege that is. It's very hard to be able to do what you love. And the best way to be able to do that is to pivot. And I'm very happy in the news space, and I think as I look back at my life and my childhood and my interests and the things that I gravitated towards, I sort of feel like I was always, the news space was always the best fit for me. Even if for periods of time I thought about maybe working in other aspects of the business. And I just think things, I do agree things happen for a reason. And I think that's, I think you got to be more zen about it or you're going to go insane. Mika says, I think Gunn is skipping Comic-Con because they're presenting at CinemaCon in April. Well, no, they're not presenting at CinemaCon in April. In April, they're presenting by, Warner Brothers is presenting at CinemaCon, and they're not going to show Superman because obviously the Flash showing that early blew up in their face, which is good. They should not show a movie that early. But they will not be doing any announcements. They'll just be talking about upcoming movies and selling them to the theater owners in attendance. So they'll be probably talking about, I would expect at CinemaCon to talk about Superman, maybe show a new trailer, Supergirl, and then maybe Clayface. That is a very weak opening slate. High Key says, Gal Gadot is, I don't want to trash anybody. Okay, Jaff says, if Superman fails, DC will be going down. So far, it looks very much like The Flash. I loved Flash, but everybody roasted that movie very much. I don't know. It certainly has its defenders. I mean, let's see. Wes, I don't think there'll ever be a DC Marvel crossover film. There's a rumor there's going to be DC Marvel crossover comics coming up, but I don't know why anybody would want to read those. Oh, that's right, CM. Jonathan Kent is LGBTQ. And it's interesting. David Cornsweet looks more like Jonathan Kent than he does, I feel, Clark Kent. CT says, do you like their costumes? I still think they look like cosplayers taking it too seriously. My only problem with the Superman costume is how big the underwear is. It's a little bit ridiculous. I think that it just, I mean, it's like, it's just not good. It's too big. Who would I cast as Wonder Woman, Sarah? I do like the Melissa Barrera idea, but again, you want to try and stay low on drama. But I do think Melissa Barrera would be a very good Wonder Woman. Hey, M. Hey, Ignacio. Okay, I'll do 5 more questions, and then I gotta go. Dallas says, what do you think, Grace, about the storylines coming from the new Absolute comic book titles? I actually really like them. I think they're phenomenal, particularly Absolute Batman. But I think the Superman one has potential. Wonder Woman is a little bit, I don't like the Wonder Woman too much. I think it's a little bit Wanda, a little bit of a ripoff of Scarlet Witch. But I think it's the least interesting of the 3. But I do very much like Absolute Batman and Superman. I don't think that Mikey Madison should be Wonder Woman. She's Harley Quinn. Like, without a doubt. Oh, that's a great idea for a poll, Dan and Drew. Let's do a poll. Anyone can vote in a poll who's watching, by the way. How does... I don't know where Gotham City Sirens is, Enrique. I mean, that seems like they should be... That would be very strong, I think, if they greenlit that. How does this update make you feel about DC Studios? Excited and confident. Excited but nervous. I'm not feeling it so far. And then bad. Sounds bad. Sounds bad. Anyone who's watching can vote in the poll, by the way. You do not have to be a member to vote. Eric says he walked back all their promises. Yeah, that's pretty typical for James Gunn. I think it's funny that you guys used to fight with me and people would get upset with me, but I think it's funny that we're all ending up on the same page for understanding how James Gunn operates. Good and bad. Hey, Elliot. I hope you had a great class. Nothing would make me happier than if Superman was a home run. You know, it's very good for me to have a fully functioning franchise out there that I can cover. Nothing is worse than when these things are tanked. I very much want Hollywood to do well, and that means these franchises are strong. Okay, let's see. We'll give it another moment on the vote. Any other questions? We'll do one more question. That's right, Batman. If the film is good and rewatchable, quality wins the day. MM92 says, do you think DC will ever come out and talk about Joker 2's utter failure? No, I don't. What's to talk about? They're never going to make another one. Wanda's attorney says, what would you cancel from the lineup? Oh, well, obviously, I would greenlight a Wonder Woman movie. I would just go right to Justice League and introduce her there. I would put Robert Pattinson into the DCU. I would make Clayface. I would not do Clayface. Maybe I would probably do Clayface as part of the Catwoman miniseries on DC, on HBO Max. I liked that idea of going from, I like the idea. Jazz says, do you think Cap 4 scared James Gunn? No, I don't. If Thunderbolt fails, then I think James Gunn will get scared. But I think James Gunn feels other elements took down Cap 4. Oh, thank you, Julio. I love Poison Ivy, Dylan. I'm a huge Poison Ivy fan. I've been a Poison Ivy fan since the Batman animated series. Did I miss someone's super chat? Oh, thanks, Sixtina. That's very sweet of you to say. I appreciate that. I'm trying to see if I missed any super chats. I don't think I missed one. I don't see one that I missed. Okay. All right, let me close the poll and then I better get going. Thank you for joining me for this. Okay, 46% of you, of the votes, are not feeling this so far. 24% are excited but nervous. 20% think it sounds downright bad. And only 8% of you are excited and confident. That's really rough. Ben, oh, McDonald's, delicious. Ranch sauce is my favorite as well. That's really crazy. 8% only are confident. I think that James Gunn is not doing, I think he's so worried about press, he should be more worried about fans. Fans are what he should be worried about. I think if anything has become proven in the past year or so is how powerful fans are. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me. The next live stream will be on Wednesday. The other live stream days this week are Wednesday and Thursday, but there will be content tomorrow. See you soon. Bye, everybody.